Hello, good afternoon, everybody. I hope you're all well. My name is Jamie Mackay. I'm the Head of Product Innovation at NCC Group. Focus of today's webinar is going to be on third-party outsourcing and operational resilience in the cloud. I hope you'll find today's session interesting. So, just to kick off then a bit about NCC Group. So, who is NCC Group? For those listeners who are less familiar with the wider NCC Group, we're a global organisation comprising of two key divisions. Our cybersecurity division, which covers a whole breadth of cybersecurity and risk management practices, in addition to our software resilience division, which focuses primarily on software resilience for both on-premise and more recently cloud applications and technologies. A few headline statistics here just to give a fair indication of the size of us as a company. Roughly 1,800 employees globally that serve north of 10,000 global customers, in addition to several thousand technology partners who both support and advocate our service offerings. Our customer base spans across organisations of all sizes and industries, and as you can see from the slide deck, an impressive number of both FTSE 250 and Fortune 500 organisations. From a global perspective, our footprint and office locations span 35 countries, with our most recent office opening in Tokyo, Japan. Our software resilience services are primarily delivered from our hubs in the UK, North America, continental Europe and Dubai. However, we have flexible contracts based on our client requirements and have over 20 legal contract templates spanning a wide number of jurisdictions, including a large growth region in APAC. At NCC, we aim to deliver services to our clients on the basis of three core principles, or a three-stage journey as we like to call it. Assess, deploy, and manage. This spans across all of our service lines, ranging from cybersecurity, risk mitigation, and governance, through to software and technology resiliency. So how does this assess, deploy, and manage framework work from a resiliency point of view? Well, with any of our client cloud engagements, we recommend an end-to-end solution that gives our customers the visibility and confirmation of what their requirements are through an initial assessment phase. Ownership and control of what the deployment of the joint resiliency plan looks like, and expectations from all parties. And finally, peace of mind that the solution is being managed in a consistent and reliable manner. So third-party or supplier outsourcing. So my specific area of expertise is around software resiliency, and referencing back to the three-stage journey I mentioned previously, I want to naturally start with the assess phase. So again, from a software or technology resiliency perspective, we as an organisation help clients focus on their third-party software application and technology risks, asking questions such as, how do you assess your third-party software suppliers? What process is followed by your organisation to give potential vendors the green light? Does this vetting process change dramatically when selecting vendors that offer cloud services? Another question that we generally ask is, what considerations does your supplier take to protect you as an organisation? Do they support or offer any protection, or do they expect you to protect yourselves and enforce that on them as the supplier? Software vendor offerings have changed since the introduction of cloud, not only from a hosting perspective, but with silent parties to a service. Third party is now naturally being extended to fourth, fifth, sixth, or seventh parties. Does your organisation consider this when selecting or reviewing your software vendor portfolio? Are they taken into account? Do you review those additional parties as well, or is that I suppose, responsibility that sits with the software vendor who's directly contracting with you? And these are just a handful of areas we support in reviewing as part of the assessment phase of our engagements. Continuing on from the assess phase in the journey is, once vendor selection has taken place, or ideally running in parallel, is to plan and manage any associated risks. A few examples of the type of risk that we look at to help manage or mitigate can be seen on the slide at the moment, which is taken from, I suppose, a financial regulation point of view. So, for example, termination of outsourcing agreement. This is usually unforeseen or unexpected termination. Failure of a service provider. Disruption that would cause the provider to be unable to continue the services on a continuous basis. And these are just to name a few. And on the next slide, we'll look at how to categorize these risks and the level of risk mitigation that should be applied. So how should these particular risks be categorized? So should they be based on reputation impact, revenue loss, number of customers impacted? As you can see on the slide in front of you, there's a couple of different questions, and I suppose a natural gauge that we have illustrated to demonstrate how we recommend these applications are categorized. Questions such as, would any sudden or unexpected loss of this supply cause a material disruption to the organisation? Would that loss impact our customers? Would the time to recover be greater than a business day or 24 hours? If all of the above, then yes. I think it would be safe to say if the answer to all of those questions was yes, then we would recommend that to be a critical application. And as you can see, that's slightly diluted as we go into medium applications and low applications. And there is no one size fits all when it comes to this categorization. This is just a best practice scenario based on lots of different input that we've got from the organizations that we work with. So now I want to briefly touch on the deploy part of the journey, which focused on which risk mitigation methods may be applicable, and for the purpose of this webinar, I wanted to focus on risk mitigation services applicable to cloud-hosted software applications. The diagram on the slide you'll be able to see on screen depicts what is the most common cloud arrangement we encounter with our customers at NCC Group. You've got a software vendor offering a public cloud-hosted application, usually as a managed service to one of their clients on a license and/or subscription basis. The challenge we frequently come across is how to manage the risk of procuring and implementing such a solution. We generally achieve this by giving customers both the contractual and technical assurance that they can implement resilience against these risks by protecting under an escrow agreement. As you can see, with escrow as a service replicates, what you get is not only protection that we are storing and protecting the software application source code, but in addition to that, the application itself, the application stack, the infrastructure and the architecture, of course, the data, which generally comes into play when we're talking about a cloud-hosted solution, and equally the continuity resilience documentation for compliance. So our service encompasses all of those key areas, which almost form part of, altogether form part of the puzzle that will enable customers to have business continuity should they need it after supply chain disruption. Escrow as a service access is another part of that service. So escrow as a service access will protect for particular customers who are primarily on single tenanted instances, protecting against their application environment access, making sure they have access to that production environment after a supply chain failure, access to that data, and once again, the all-important continuity and resiliency documentation to make sure that they can demonstrate the compliance and business continuity methods and methodology that they have put in place. And finally, hopefully you'll be able to, again, see an illustrated version of what the overall assess, deploy and manage journey generally looks like from a resiliency perspective. The third, I guess, and final part of our recommended customer journey is the manage stage. So the manage stage is generally reviewed on a periodic basis to ensure that both the internal policies that we implement as part of the assess and deploy and process around third-party resilience and risk is being adhered to. Importantly, it's still relevant to the organisation. We obviously are the first to admit that organisations can change quite rapidly, especially from a technology perspective. So making sure that obviously the way applications are categorised, that may change on a frequent basis, and equally how risks associated with those categories can be mitigated will also change on a frequent basis. And I suppose a key point of reference there is as organisations tend to move towards more cloud-hosted applications, get more comfortable with that in various industries, and again, that is, I suppose, quite a good catalyst to, as an example of the type of change that I'm referencing. So another key objective of the managed stage is to ensure consistency, as I mentioned previously. So consistency across the applications, consistency across that risk mitigation is a really important and integral part of the solution that we implement for our clients. So I won't take up any more of your time. I appreciate this was quite a high-level overview of what our three-stage customer cloud journey looks like through the lens of NCC Group. If you have any questions following this webinar, please feel free to reach out to myself or anybody at NCC Group, and I hope you found this webinar useful. Thank you and have a nice day.